The morning sky above the ranch lands opened with a soft golden light. The sun rose slowly, touching the hills and turning them warm and bright. A young cowboy named Tom rode on his old but loyal horse as he made his way toward the large livestock market in town. Tom was not a loud man or someone who tried to show how brave he was. People often said he had a quiet strength. He spoke gently, worked hard, and respected every animal he met. That morning, Tom had one clear purpose. He wanted to buy a new horse that could help him with long rides across the plains and heavy work on the ranch. The market was busy when Tom arrived. Vendors shouted prices, families walked through the rows of animals, and horses neighed loudly as they waited for buyers. Tom guided his horse through the crowd with steady hands. He looked at many horses lined up in clean stalls, each one groomed and standing proudly. Some horses were strong but did not have the spark he needed. Others were quick but lacked calmness. Tom believed a good horse had to be both brave and gentle at heart. At the far end of the market, Tom noticed a group of men gathered around a large closed gate. Curious voices rose in the air as the men whispered among themselves. Tom walked closer and saw a tall brown horse inside the fenced area. The horse had a dark mane that flowed down its neck and eyes that watched every movement with a sharp alertness. Its muscles were strong and firm. It looked like a horse made for long travel and open land. But something about it made the onlookers stand several steps back. A wooden board hung on the gate. Painted on it were the words everyone was talking about. It said the horse was too wild for any man. The older rancher who owned the horse, a tired and sunburned man named Bill, stood beside the gate. He explained to anyone who asked that the horse had thrown off every rider who had tried to mount it. Bill said he had never seen such a horse. It kicked at the fence, reared up when anyone came close, and refused to let a saddle stay on its back for more than a moment. People shook their heads and laughed nervously. Some buyers said the horse was a waste of time. Others said it was dangerous. A few looked at it with fear. Tom listened quietly to the comments, but his eyes stayed fixed on the horse. Something in its stance caught his attention. The horse did not seem angry to him. Its movements looked tense, like it did not understand what people wanted from it. It seemed lost rather than mean. Tom stepped forward and rested his hand on the wooden fence. The horse turned its head quickly, expecting another loud voice or a sudden move. Instead, Tom remained still. He did not raise his hand or walk closer. He only breathed slow and calm. The horse watched him for a long moment. Its ears moved forward, then back, as it tried to sense his intention. Tom stood like a quiet tree in the middle of a storm, giving the horse time to study him. After a short while, the horse lowered its head slightly. It was not a full bow, but it was the first sign of softness anyone had seen from it. Bill noticed this right away. He walked toward Tom with surprise on his face. He asked if Tom wanted to try riding the horse, but Tom shook his head. Tom said he only wanted to buy it and take it home. The crowd around them fell silent. They stared at Tom as if he had made a foolish choice. Some whispered that he must be too confident. Others thought he had lost his senses. But Tom ignored their doubts. He trusted what he had seen in the horse's eyes. He believed the horse was wild because it had never found a person who understood it. Bill lowered the price because he was tired of keeping the horse and wanted it gone. Tom paid without hesitation. After signing the papers, Tom opened the gate slowly. The horse took one step back but did not rear up. Tom stood at the entrance and let the air settle between them. Then he lifted the rope with a gentle motion. The horse hesitated for a moment, then stepped forward and walked beside him. The people who watched could not believe their eyes. The horse that would not obey anyone was walking calmly with a soft step. Tom named the horse Star. A small white mark on the horse's forehead shaped like a star inspired the name. Tom liked simple names that felt natural. Star flicked its ears and made a soft sound, as if testing the new name. Tom did not rush it. He spoke in his calm voice and guided Star away from the market. Some buyers followed with their eyes, whispering that Tom would not make it far before the horse broke free. But Star walked with a steady pace beside him. The walk back to the ranch took time, but Tom did not push Star. They stopped near a stream where the water ran clear and cool. Star drank slowly, then looked at Tom with a thoughtful gaze. Tom sat on a smooth rock and rested. He knew trust was not something that came overnight. It had to grow slowly, like a seed planted in the earth. The wind brushed through the tall grass, and Star lifted its head to feel it. The horse's eyes softened again, as if something familiar in the open land brought peace. When they reached the ranch, Tom led Star into a large open corral. It had enough space for Star to move freely. Tom did not try to put on a saddle that day. He wanted Star to feel safe first. The other ranch workers watched from a distance. They had heard the stories about the wild horse, and they were curious to see what would happen next. Tom told them he would take his time. He believed Star was not born to be feared. The horse was meant to be understood. As the sun set behind the hills, Star stood close to the fence and watched Tom as he worked. There was no anger in the horse's stance, only quiet wonder. Tom smiled to himself. He did not know it yet, but Star had not been born to walk behind any man. Star had been born to ride beside him, to share the open land and the long roads ahead. Morning light touched the ranch gently as Tom stepped out of his small wooden house. The air was cool and clean, carrying the smell of fresh grass. Birds sang in short, cheerful notes from the fence posts. Tom loved mornings like this because they brought peace to the heart and hope to the day. He walked toward the corral where Star had spent the night. The tall brown horse stood near the far corner, ears forward, watching every movement with sharp interest. Tom carried a bucket of clean water and a small bag of grain. He did not walk directly to Star. Instead, he placed the bucket and grain near the middle of the corral and stepped back. Star eyed the food, then looked at Tom. The horse did not rush toward it. Star first circled slowly, moving with careful steps as if measuring the space around them. Tom waited patiently. He knew Star needed time. A horse that had never trusted humans would not change in one night. After a while, Star approached the bucket and drank slowly. Tom watched the horse relax slightly. Star then ate a little of the grain, stopping often to look up and check if Tom was still far enough away. Tom smiled. This was a good sign. Trust was like a small flame. It had to be protected so it could grow brighter. When Star finished eating, Tom took a step forward. Star lifted its head fast, but did not move back. Tom spoke softly, saying simple words to keep the air calm. Star blinked and lowered its head again. Tom spent the whole morning near the corral. He sat on the fence while Star walked the open space. Sometimes Star came closer. Sometimes the horse stayed far. Tom never forced anything. He believed that Star needed the choice to come near or stay away. By noon, the sun was high, and Star finally stood just a few steps from Tom. The horse sniffed the sleeve of Tom's shirt. Tom did not raise his hand. He let Star explore on its own. After a moment, Star moved away again, but the first small bond had been formed. Days passed in the same gentle rhythm. Every morning Tom checked on Star, offered water and grain, and sat by the fence. Star began to approach faster, standing close enough for Tom to touch the horse's side. The first time Tom placed his hand on Star's neck, the horse tensed for a second, but did not move away. Tom felt the warmth and strength under Star's coat. It was like touching a river that had once been wild but now flowed calmly. Tom did not saddle Star yet. He only brushed the horse, letting Star feel that human hands could bring comfort, not pressure. He brushed the mane carefully until it shone under the sunlight. Star stood still, sometimes taking slow breaths as if enjoying the new feeling. Tom talked softly while brushing. He told Star about the ranch, about the long rides he hoped they would take one day, and about the peaceful land that stretched beyond the hills. Star listened with ears moving gently, as if the horse understood the dreams hidden in Tom's words. One afternoon, Tom brought a long rope to the corral. Star watched him with alert eyes. Tom did not attach it right away. He let Star smell it first. The horse sniffed the rope with curiosity. Tom slowly lifted it and placed it on Star's neck without tying it. Star flinched a little, then relaxed. Tom moved with slow and steady motions, always giving Star time to think. When he finally tied the rope loosely, Star did not resist. Tom guided the horse a few steps and praised it with a calm voice. Star followed his lead, unsure at first but willing to try. The news spread among the workers. They had expected Star to fight or refuse, but instead they watched a wild horse take careful steps beside Tom. Some of them said Tom had magic in his hands. Others said he had a special heart that animals could feel. Tom only smiled. He believed Star had always been capable of trust. The horse had only needed someone who listened with patience instead of fear. One evening, Tom opened the corral gate and let Star walk in the wide open field behind the ranch. The sky was painted with warm colors of orange and pink as the sun set behind the hills. Star trotted around freely, kicking up small clouds of dust. Tom followed at a slow pace, giving Star room to stretch and explore. The horse ran with strong legs, cutting through the field like a streak of brown fire. Tom watched with pride. Star was not dangerous. Star was powerful and spirited, born for wide land and open skies. After running for a while, Star slowed down and walked toward Tom. The horse stood beside him without being asked. Tom laid his hand gently on Star's neck and felt the steady breathing. He whispered that Star was doing well, and the horse seemed to understand. They walked together across the field, a man and a horse moving at the same pace as if they had known each other for years. That night, Tom sat outside his house under the quiet sky. Stars twinkled above him. He thought about the journey ahead. He knew Star still needed time before carrying a saddle or rider. Trust needed to be deep and strong before they took that step. But Tom was patient. He believed that Star was not just any horse. There was something special in the way Star looked at him, something that felt like destiny. The next morning brought a small but important change. When Tom entered the corral, Star walked toward him without waiting for food. The horse stopped right in front of him and lowered its head slightly. Tom felt warmth grow in his chest. This was more than trust. This was companionship. He raised his hand and touched Star's cheek. Star closed its eyes for a moment, breathing calm and steady. Tom decided it was time to try something new. He brought a blanket, soft and lightweight. Star watched with mild confusion. Tom folded the blanket and placed it gently across Star's back. Star shifted its weight but did not panic. Tom spoke soothing words and smoothed the blanket into place. It stayed there without trouble. Tom stepped back to see how Star would react. Star turned its head a little, flicked its tail, and then stood still. This was a great step. A wild horse that had once refused any saddle now accepted a simple blanket. Tom knew this sign meant they were making real progress. He praised Star and brushed the horse's neck. The trust between them grew stronger every day. As the sun set once again, Tom led Star to the large open field. They walked side by side, their shadows stretching long across the ground. The wind carried the scent of fresh soil and sweet grass. Star lifted its head high, ears forward, eyes bright with life. Tom watched the horse with admiration. He felt certain that Star was meant to walk beside him, not behind or ahead. They were two souls learning each other's rhythm with patience and respect. Star took a few steps closer, brushing its shoulder against Tom in a gentle gesture. Tom placed his hand on Star's warm coat and smiled. The journey was long, but they were moving in the right direction. The first bond had been formed, and it was strong enough to shape everything that would come next. The sun rose slowly above the quiet ranch, spreading soft light across the open fields. Tom stepped outside with steady steps, ready for a new day of work and training. The air felt cool on his skin, and the grass still held drops of morning dew. Far in the corral, Star stood waiting. The horse's ears pointed toward Tom as soon as he appeared, as if Star had been expecting him. Tom carried a brush, a blanket, and a small saddle. He did not plan to force anything. He only wanted to see how much Star was ready for. Days of patience had brought them this far, and Tom knew that trust grew best when allowed to bloom slowly. When Tom entered the corral, Star walked up to him without hesitation. The horse's warm breath touched Tom's hand as Star nudged him gently. Tom smiled and brushed Star's neck, feeling the smooth rhythm of the horse's breathing. Star stood tall and calm, different from the frightened and restless animal Tom had first seen at the market. Tom placed the blanket over Star's back. Star shifted slightly, then stood still. Tom praised the horse with a calm voice. After brushing the blanket lightly to make sure it sat flat, Tom brought the saddle closer. This was the moment he had waited for. He placed his hand on the saddle and let Star smell it. The horse sniffed it with slow curiosity. There was no fear, only careful thinking. Tom lifted the saddle gently and placed it slowly onto Star's back. The horse's muscles tightened for a moment, but Star did not jump or shake it off. Tom spoke in a smooth and low tone, letting Star hear comfort in every word. When he fastened the straps, Star took a deep breath but stayed calm. It was a small miracle. A horse once called too wild for any man now stood still while accepting a saddle. Tom ran his hand softly along Star's neck. He knew that riding would not happen immediately. First, Star needed to feel the saddle while moving. Tom took the rope and guided Star in a circle around the corral. Star walked with careful steps, unsure at first. With each round, the horse moved more confidently. The saddle stayed firm, and Star adjusted to the new weight. Tom then guided Star into a slow trot. The horse lifted its legs higher and moved with energy. Dust rose around them as Star found a new rhythm. Tom watched closely, ready to step in if Star became nervous, but the horse only grew steadier. The movement felt natural, as if Star had been waiting for this moment. By midday, Tom felt that Star was ready for the next step. He placed his hand on the saddle horn and gently put a little weight on it. Star tensed but did not step away. Tom removed his hand and praised the horse again. He repeated this several times until Star stayed relaxed even when Tom applied more weight. Tom then placed his foot in the stirrup and lifted himself halfway. Star's ears flicked backward, then forward again. Tom slid down and stroked the horse's neck. He whispered steady words. After a few more tries, Star accepted his weight without fear. The moment had come. Tom took a deep breath, placed his foot in the stirrup once more, and lifted himself onto Star's back. He moved slowly and carefully, giving Star time to understand each motion. Star took one startled breath, then stood completely still. Tom felt a rush of pride and relief. He sat tall, his hands light on the reins. Star's ears pointed forward, waiting for the next signal. Tom guided Star gently into a small step. Star moved with a cautious stride, feeling Tom's weight and learning this new balance. Step by step, they walked together around the corral. The workers who had gathered near the fence watched with wide eyes. Some whispered in amazement. Others shook their heads, unable to believe what they were seeing. The horse that no one could ride was now carrying Tom calmly. Tom kept the first ride short. He did not want to overwhelm Star. After a few slow rounds, he slid off the saddle and brushed Star's neck, thanking the horse with simple words. Star stood proudly, as if understanding the achievement. Tom gave Star fresh water and a handful of grain. Star ate with a relaxed posture, showing trust in every movement. As the afternoon sun lowered, Tom led Star out to the wide field again. This field had become their special place. Star moved freely through the tall grass, occasionally stopping to look at Tom as though asking him to join. Tom followed at a slow pace, enjoying the warm breeze and the soft sounds of nature around them. After a while, Star returned to Tom and stood close, pressing its head gently against Tom's shoulder. Tom felt a deep connection, something rare and precious. Star was not just a horse that he trained. Star was becoming a companion, a partner shaped by trust instead of fear. Days turned into a steady routine. Tom continued riding Star for brief periods, always ending on a calm note. Each day, Star grew more confident with the saddle and the weight of a rider. They began trotting in wide circles, then extended those trots to longer paths around the ranch. Tom kept his hands light on the reins, letting Star lead when the horse felt sure and guiding only when needed. The ranch workers started saying that Tom and Star looked like they had been riding together for years. They said Star walked differently around Tom, calmer and proud, no longer the wild creature that once frightened everyone. One late afternoon, Tom decided to take Star beyond the ranch for the first time. The sky was painted with soft shades of gold as the sun prepared to set. Tom mounted Star, and the horse vibrated with quiet excitement. They began moving down the long dirt road that led to the open plains. Star trotted with smooth steps as if feeling the freedom ahead. When they reached the edge of the plains, Star lifted its head high. The wind pressed against Tom's face, carrying the fresh smell of soil and wild grass. Tom loosened the reins slightly. Star broke into a gentle run, moving with natural grace. Tom leaned forward slightly, matching Star's rhythm. They glided across the land, man and horse moving as one, creating a path in the golden field. When they finally slowed, Tom felt something shift inside him. Star was not meant to be a wild problem. Star was meant to be a partner, a friend born to stand beside him on every long road and open journey. As they returned to the ranch, Star walked with a proud but peaceful stride. Tom's heart was full. He knew the bond between them had reached a new level. The first ride was only the beginning of a greater story. The morning sun rose slowly over the ranch, spreading warm light across the open plains. Tom stood beside Star, checking the saddle straps one more time. Today was important. He had planned a long ride across the old trail that wound through hills, crossed small streams, and led toward a quiet valley. This trail was known for its calm beauty, but it also tested the bond between riders and their horses. Tom believed that Star was ready for it. Star stood tall beside him. The horse's coat glowed under the sunlight. Star's ears moved with alert interest, sensing the adventure ahead. Tom placed his hand on Star's neck and felt the steady breathing. It gave him comfort. Their trust had grown stronger each day, and he was proud of the progress. Tom mounted Star with smooth movements. Star shifted slightly, then stood firm. Tom held the reins loosely and guided Star toward the start of the trail. Star walked with confidence, hooves tapping lightly on the dirt road. The ranch grew small behind them as they moved deeper into the open land. The first few miles passed quietly. Star walked at a steady pace, sometimes trotting when the path widened. Birds flew above them, singing bright morning songs. The grass waved gently in the wind, making a soft rustling sound. Tom breathed deeply, feeling free and peaceful. Star matched his rhythm, moving with strong and graceful steps. As they reached the first hill, Tom leaned forward a little. Star climbed with slow but powerful strides. At the top, the view opened wide. Rolling hills spread out in every direction, glowing under the golden light. Star lifted its head proudly. Tom smiled. Moments like this made the long hours of training worth every effort. They continued along the trail until they reached a narrow path between two rocky ridges. Star slowed down, ears alert. The sound of distant water echoed between the rocks. Tom spoke gently, and Star moved forward with caution. The path was tight, but Star handled it with steady confidence. When they reached the end of the rocky passage, the land opened into a bright meadow. Tom guided Star toward a small stream. The water flowed clean and clear. Star lowered its head to drink, while Tom looked around the peaceful valley. The air felt cool and fresh. He slid off the saddle and let Star rest. Tom sat on a fallen log nearby and watched the horse explore the edge of the stream. Star flicked its tail and moved with calm steps. They stayed in that quiet spot for a long time. After resting, Tom mounted again, and they continued deeper into the valley. The trail became softer, with patches of grass and wildflowers covering the ground. Star enjoyed the gentle steps. Tom could feel the horse's energy growing as they traveled. Everything felt smooth and natural until they reached a part of the valley Tom had forgotten about. A large fallen tree blocked the path. It lay across the trail, long and heavy. Star stopped and stared at it. Tom knew they needed to turn around or find another way, but Star did something unexpected. The horse stepped closer, studied the fallen tree, and lifted its front legs slightly as if thinking of jumping. Tom tightened the reins gently and said calm words. He did not want Star to try something dangerous. Star lowered its legs but stayed restless. Tom stroked the horse's neck and looked around. He found a narrow passage along the side of the trail where the fallen tree left a small space. It was tight, but possible. He guided Star slowly toward it. Star moved sideways with careful steps, trying to fit through the space without touching the sharp branches. It took time and patience, but they made it through. When they emerged on the other side, Tom praised Star with a warm voice. Star shook its mane and snorted softly, as if relieved. The trail continued ahead, wider now and lined with tall trees. Their leaves formed a soft green roof that allowed sunlight to fall in bright patches on the ground. As they rode under the trees, Tom felt a peaceful silence. Only the sound of Star's hooves and the wind in the leaves filled the air. Tom thought about how far they had come. There had been no rush, no pressure. Everything had been built on trust. Star was no longer a frightened horse that refused to be touched. Star was now brave, willing, and full of life. But as they went deeper into the woods, something changed in Star's behavior. The horse's ears twitched back and forth. Star's steps grew slower. Tom felt tension in the reins. Star stopped suddenly, lifting its head high. Tom looked around, but saw nothing unusual. The woods were quiet, only the wind moving through leaves. Tom whispered calm words and stroked Star's neck. But Star kept staring ahead with wide alert eyes. Tom trusted Star's senses, so he waited. After a few quiet moments, a soft rustling sound came from the bushes ahead. A small deer jumped out and ran across the trail. Star shifted but did not panic. Tom held the reins steady and whispered that everything was safe. The deer vanished between the trees, leaving the woods silent again. Star lowered its head and moved forward slowly. Tom felt the tension leave the horse's body. He smiled and patted Star's shoulder. Their bond had grown strong enough to face unexpected moments without fear. The trail led them to another open field. The evening sun touched the land with soft orange light. Tom dismounted and let Star rest again. He sat on a stone and watched the long shadows stretching across the grass. Star grazed quietly nearby. Tom felt grateful. He knew that the horse by his side was not only strong but also loyal. When it was time to head back, Tom mounted Star once more. The journey home was slow and gentle. Star walked with a relaxed stride, no longer tense or alert. When they reached the ranch, the workers looked up with smiles. They had seen Tom and Star ride out many times, but today something felt different. The connection between them looked deeper, stronger. Tom guided Star to the corral and removed the saddle. Star nuzzled Tom's shoulder, as if saying that the day had been good. Tom brushed the horse gently and offered fresh water. The sky turned dark blue as night approached. Tom leaned on the fence and watched Star settle down. He felt a deep sense of peace. The long trail had shown him that Star trusted him deeply. The horse that once stood alone and frightened at the market now walked by his side like a true companion. Tom did not know exactly what the future would bring, but he felt certain that whatever it was, Star would be part of it. They were no longer simply man and horse. They were partners shaped by patience and trust, ready for the next chapter of their journey. Morning came with a soft glow that spread across the ranch like a warm blanket. Tom stepped outside and stretched his arms as the cool air touched his face. He had slept well, but his mind was full of thoughts. The bond between him and Star had grown stronger with every passing day. They had traveled long trails, crossed streams, explored valleys, and learned each other's rhythm. Tom believed they were ready for anything, but the world had its own way of testing even the strongest partnerships. Star stood near the fence, waiting with gentle patience. When Tom approached, Star lifted its head and stepped forward. The horse's eyes shined softly in the morning light, showing calm trust. Tom brushed Star's coat slowly, appreciating the strength and warmth beneath his hand. The horse leaned into the touch, relaxed and content. Tom saddled Star with smooth movements. Today he planned to ride toward a distant ridge that he had not visited in months. The ridge was known for its strong winds and uneven paths. Tom thought it would be a good test for their partnership. If they could handle that trail together, it would show how far Star had come from the frightened horse he had first met. They set off at a steady walk, moving through familiar fields. Grass whispered under Star's hooves. Birds moved between the branches of nearby trees, singing in short bright calls. Tom felt peaceful. He let the reins rest lightly between his fingers. Star walked with confident steps, ears flicking gently as the wind shifted. As they traveled farther from the ranch, the land began to change. The fields grew rougher, with stones scattered across the dirt path. The wind blew stronger, brushing through Star's mane and carrying the smell of distant pine trees. Tom sat tall, knowing the journey ahead would be harder but trusting Star's strength. They reached the base of the ridge by midday. The path climbed upward in a slow but steady rise. Star studied the path for a moment, then stepped forward with care. Tom spoke calm words as they climbed. Star's hooves struck against stones, sending small sounds echoing through the ridge. The wind grew louder the higher they went. It pushed against Tom's jacket and lifted Star's mane into the air. When they reached halfway, Tom stopped Star so they could rest. He looked down at the land below. The ranch was too far away to see, but the open plains spread wide across the horizon. Star breathed deeply, chest rising with steady rhythm. Tom stroked the horse's neck, feeling proud. Star had grown into a strong companion, brave and loyal. They started climbing again. The ridge narrowed, with tall rocks standing like silent guards on either side. Star stepped carefully, reading the ground with sharp awareness. Tom felt the wind grow heavier. It rushed between the rocks, making a deep whistling sound. Star slowed, ears alert. Tom spoke softly, trying to keep the air calm. Suddenly, a loud rumble echoed across the ridge. It sounded like a falling rock. Star jerked slightly but stayed still. Tom scanned the ridge, trying to see what had made the noise. Before he could find the answer, another sound came from above. A large stone rolled down from the upper cliff and crashed onto the path a few feet ahead of them. Dust rose into the air. Star backed up in surprise. Tom held the reins steady and spoke with a firm but calm voice. Star blinked hard, muscles tight, but did not run. Tom gently guided the horse backward into a wider part of the path. More small stones fell, bouncing and scattering around them. The ridge had become dangerous. Tom knew they had to move. Staying still was not safe. He checked the path behind them. It was narrow but clear. He turned Star around slowly. The horse obeyed, stepping with controlled caution. Tom leaned forward and whispered steady words. Star listened closely, lowering its head as if trying to ground itself. Just as they began their descent, another rumble shook the ridge. A section of the upper cliff gave way, sending dust and rocks down the slope. Star jumped in fear, nearly losing balance. Tom grabbed the reins tightly and pressed his legs gently against the saddle to steady the horse. Star trembled but did not fall. Tom spoke sharply, not in anger but in urgency. He guided Star toward a small opening in the rocks. It looked like a natural shelter, barely large enough for both of them. Star moved quickly, trusting Tom's direction. They reached the shelter just as a heavy wave of stones rolled across the path they had been standing on moments earlier. Dust filled the air outside. Tom slid off the saddle and held Star's face gently between his hands. The horse breathed fast, frightened by the noise. Tom stroked Star's neck and whispered calm words. He told Star that they were safe. Slowly, the horse's breathing settled. They waited in the shelter for the rocks to stop falling. It took a long time. Dust settled eventually, leaving the ridge quiet once again. Tom stepped outside and checked the path. It was covered with stones and sharp debris. There was no way to continue forward. They had to return the way they had come. Tom mounted Star again. The horse lifted its head, eyes alert but steady. Tom guided Star carefully down the ridge. Step by step, they made their way through the narrow paths. Star moved with focus, placing each hoof with care. Tom felt Star's trust in every movement. The horse followed his lead without hesitation. When they reached the bottom of the ridge, Tom slid off the saddle and wrapped his arms around Star's neck. Star lowered its head and nuzzled Tom's shoulder. It was a simple but powerful moment. The ridge had tested them more than any trail before. Fear had come, danger had come, but loyalty had stayed strong. They walked slowly back toward the ranch. The afternoon sun softened into warm gold as it began to set. Star walked close to Tom, sometimes brushing its head against his arm. Tom did not rush the journey. He let the quiet land guide them home. When they reached the ranch, the workers hurried over, surprised to see them covered in dust and dirt. Tom explained what had happened on the ridge. They listened with wide eyes. Some shook their heads in disbelief. Others looked at Star with newfound respect. Tom brushed Star carefully that evening. The horse stood calm, eyes soft with trust. Tom whispered that Star had been brave. The horse flicked its ears gently, as if understanding the praise. As night settled over the ranch, Tom leaned on the fence and watched Star rest peacefully in the corral. He thought about the first day he had seen the frightened horse behind the market gate. He thought about the warnings and the doubts from others. He remembered the sign that had said Star was too wild for any man. Now, Tom knew the truth. Star had never been too wild. Star had only been waiting for someone who listened, someone patient enough to understand. The ridge had tested their trust, and they had passed together. Star was not born to fight or fear. Star was born to ride beside him, not behind and not ahead, but always beside him on every path the world offered. Their journey was only beginning, but Tom knew one thing with certainty. Wherever he went, Star would follow. And wherever Star led, Tom would go. Their bond was stronger than fear, stronger than doubt, and strong enough to carry them through every trail ahead.